ain't nothing to it but to do it. Yeah, just put out a lot of content and don't worry so much about how well it does at first. Just put out content because you want to help people or because you like making content or you are really eager to share whatever message you have. So just do it. And the same thing with, what pertains to your question, just make a bunch of content and put it out there.
I always look at it as like, how can I answer the questions that I've had in a similar situation? So that's kind of like what drives the content or who I'm talking to is like, what questions do they have? Who's my audience? And that's what just drives the content. Like whatever comes to mind, like that's what I'm putting out. I think we all can say that at one point we're probably very critical of ourselves, but then we realize like you just, like he said, you just got to put it out, put yourself out there. And then there's, just, it'll end up happening one way or another. Like it takes a lot of time, but it'll just work its way out.
Yeah, I would say definitely try and find your voice. It's gonna feel awkward when you start because you honestly won't have an identity. You won't really know like what's my niche, like who do I really want to talk to? So you might start talking about things that you're interested in at first, and that's a very good thing. But over time, you'll kind of self-select where you want to go. Where it's like, okay, like I want to coach, let's say, football athletes. That's kind of what my passion is. And try and not give a unique spin on it. You always want to be authentic, but what's a space that I could try and fill? Like is this area saturated, right? It's like, oh, like let's say you wanted to be a bikini model. I'm like, buddy, I got bad news for you. It's really saturated. It's tough competition. And so I think specificity in terms of what you try and talk about is more important now than generalizing, So it pays to be passionate about something. And I would ultimately, because there are a lot of people trying to do this, I would say that it's about depth, not breadth, right? So like kind of going into something, finding out, I'm not even saying the level of knowledge, the complexity, but I'm saying your passion for something. It could be super specific, like discus throwers. Like I just love it for some reason. That's what I like to do. I want to coach those people. Yeah, man, you don't need 100,000 followers. If you could find your niche and that's your niche, own it.
I think it's a book, 1,000 True Fans, and it literally breaks down that all you need is 1,000 people to just buy into what you're about, and that could set you up for all the success you'd ever basically would need or want to provide for your life or fulfill yourself. So I think people get caught up of like, oh, I need 500,000 subscribers on YouTube. I need to get to 10K on Instagram. But rather you'd have 100 people who you really, like he said, dive deep into about something specific, and that'll have an overall bigger return down the road.
When I'm in there and all that going on around me.
Is there any way to lift late at night or really early in the morning?
I've tried it.
I would personally, if my kids woke up at 6:30 a.m., I would get in the gym before then. That's me personally. Yeah. But other than that, I would probably turn the music up as loud as I can so I can't hear them.
I tried. Doesn't work.
It's tough. I would say just ease up on the reins a bit. Don't be so focused on your session that if anything disrupts this, my workout's gone to shit. Just accept that it's going to happen and try to roll with it. But that's hard. I don't have a great answer, especially because I don't have any experience in it.
Yeah.
So
I think I can kind of relate. Not I don't have kids or anything, but just with the business, like I know if I start thinking about other things outside of training, it can influence how the session may go. Or if I step foot in the office, like I'm probably not going to train or whatever. So for me, more recently, it's just been like focusing on the opportunity I get to lift every day. Like as simple as that. Like not, and I know we take it for granted, right? But there's a lot of people that don't get to lift. A lot of people don't have a home gym or the equipment you have. So it's like when you kind of reset your mind on that, you're like, it's a good freaking day. You know what I mean? It's like my kids love me and they're running around lifting weights. It's kind of crazy. You could make a YouTube video, a channel, like, you know what I mean? Or like a following about it. Like it's weird like that. But, just kind of reframe your mindset a little bit.
yeah, maybe like first world problems.
Yeah.
Like my kids bother me when I get to lift in my own garage.
You go far.
Yeah, really.
Yeah.
You're a deadbeat like me, and I like it. You don't like training in the morning. I love it. I would say, honestly, what I personally have found, if you're trying to go for strength, and I understand that where, prior to lifting, you kind of want to reframe things. You want to clear your head. You want that separation from everything that just happened before. Get in the zone. it's a little hard. And so when people talk about auto-regulation, they talk about how you feel in that day, right? Or like how the performance is going to adjust what you should do. But auto-regulation as it relates to you could be a little bit different in that what's going on with your kids, right? Like how do you feel going into that session? Like how prepared are you, feeling a little fatigued, whatever. Cool, it's like maybe make that a day that you focus a little bit more on volume instead, where that's not as stressful. You know, like if you're getting ready for a 1 rep max, let's just say this is your day, you programmed it's like Monday I'm supposed to hit this shit, and your kids are just yelling a lot, like you know this is not gonna happen, maybe it's time to readjust that. So I would say almost adjusting your intensity level as it relates to how you feel or what's going on around you. Yeah.
Just do insane amount of push-ups. Just sitting there. Your kids are just going nuts. Yeah.
You're like, guess I'm doing a bigger load now. Weighted push-ups.
Alright, so my issue's been my squat. My bench press, my deadlift for last year have been going up. I'm happy with those. But my squats stayed about the same. The reason is every time I start getting heavy, I lose my depth. And I'm not sure what to do. I've been even thinking about maybe on my heavier squats, not worry so much about making depth. And I was just wondering if you had any recommendations or about being something to consider.
I probably wouldn't recommend that because 135, 225, 315 should all look the same. But man, I just lost my train of thought. If you guys have something, go ahead. I had something to say, but I just lost it.
I just think, honestly, just lowering, or like, getting better at just squatting to depth every time. And I was saying to you, like setting up a tactile such as pins. Like, every time you're getting lower to the pins, it's going to be like you got it or you don't type of situation. And just kind of doing that over time, you're going to start to know that obviously it's getting better. I would agree with him by saying don't just keep raising your depth. So just keep trying to work on that.
You're walking out with 1,000 pounds.
Yeah, 1,000
Nailed
pound
that
squat. Yeah.
Now, I will say, are you just unaware of your depth in the moment? As it gets heavier, you're kind of just like, you think you're squatting to depth, and then when you review the footage, you're like, oh man, I cut that 3 inches short?
Yeah.
Type of thing? Okay.
That's what it is, yeah.
So that tactile cue, either the pins or where you can set up so maybe it doesn't clang, is just
Box.
a box or, and then you put like a pillow or just something light so you graze it, like you feel it, right? You squat back up. I wouldn't recommend if you're maxing out or anything for that, but just that repeatable process, that idea where you establish to yourself, okay, I squatted this feels like depth to me. And then over time, you kind of just know that, Another thing you could do if you don't have a box, if you have even a band, you could set a band up where you just feel that touch on the tush, and then you're like, all right, that is the depth. And then over time, I'm confident you'll be able to self-assess, yeah, I'm hitting depth or not. Yeah.
So I was going to mention what I would call your threshold. So if you find that every time I get to 250, I always find myself cutting depth, right? Then just stop going up to 250. And maybe if you're working with submaximal weight for different, rep and set schemes, you can bump that threshold up to 275. So now every time I get to 275, my depth is, I don't have as much confidence, but 250 is more manageable. Kind of similar with rounding your back. Every time I get to 315, my back rounds over real hard when I deadlift. Maybe over time we could push that threshold up so that it doesn't happen until you get to 365. So if it always happens with a certain weight, stop going up to that weight all the time.
Fatigue in my lower back, does that necessarily mean that it's something wrong with my form? Because I find myself questioning my form a lot when I get a little fatigue in my lower back.
No. Next question. Short answer.
I would say the same thing. No. Nope. I don't think it's anything to worry about. Oftentimes, when we're lifting and we feel something different, we just assume it's bad. Like, oh, this feels different. My knee feels different today. It's important not to catastrophize and say, I know you're not, but oh, I feel fatigued in my back. What am I doing wrong? Maybe nothing. And I might look at, if you say every time I squat, my back is really bothering me, then I would just look at overall programming, your overall fatigue. You might be doing too much, but generally, no. I would say it's nothing to worry about.
About maintaining my strength while losing weight.
What specifically?
Tips.
How tips?
Yeah.
Um,
Partially increasing my strength in certain areas.
Are you trying to lose a whole bunch of weight quickly, or just like a couple of pounds over a period of time? Yeah, I don't think there's anything. I think it's perfectly reasonable to expect, and I'm sorry. It's reasonable to expect you to just maintain or increase your strength if you lose a couple of pounds.
Lose a couple of pounds,
I would say percentage of body weight too, because for you 10 pounds might be a lot, but for someone else
Right.
it might be a little.
Yeah, so I think that there's no reason you shouldn't be able to lose a couple of pounds, whatever that means. I don't think you should expect that, hey, I want to lose 5 pounds. I know my strength's going to go down, so what do I do?
Right.
I wouldn't expect that. But auto-regulation would certainly help with that, so that you aren't set to a certain percentage or a certain weight increase every single session or every single week. You just, if you're familiar with RPE, you just follow that from session to session.
Out of curiosity, let's just try and frame it. How much weight are you trying to lose?
I haven't made my mind.
Okay,
I mean, by the end of this year, I will be down at least 10 more pounds.
gotcha.
That
Okay.
I know.
So, as a skinny boy that likes doing body recomp and also likes to lift some weight, I've thought about this quite a bit. And I've experimented with it. And I think there's a few different approaches, exactly what Alan said. I think if you're willing to go for a slower approach, it'll be far less noticeable, any potential decrease. And in fact, I think with proper programming, you can increase your strength. I think it depends upon your overall level of strength. If you're a world champion, if you're an advanced lifter, and you're trying to go down a weight class, and in that time frame, maybe it's 12 weeks, it's 16 weeks, it's not a lot of time, yeah, you're gonna experience some strength decrease. If you're a beginner, intermediate, or if you're just someone where you're still noticing it's easy to add more pounds to the bar, and you wanna lose weight, I think it's entirely possible if it's, let's say, 10 pounds, and you wanna do it over, you said by the end of the year, so we're looking at what, maybe like 12 weeks, something like that. That's a pretty short time frame. It's still possible. The other technique that I like and something I've been doing recently, and I'm gonna try and test out the bench at the end just to kind of verify some of these things for myself. But the slow and steady rate, I'm a really big fan of. The thing that I've been doing, and I first learned it from Eric Helms, is the concept of diet breaks. And so you could do 12 weeks where you're in a moderate deficit. So let's say 300 calories below maintenance. Okay, so you're losing maybe about half a pound a week. That's one way for sure to do it. Another way is to be slightly more aggressive for a certain block. So you do 3 weeks in a larger deficit, 2 weeks then at maintenance. But in those 3 weeks, instead of losing half a pound, you lose a pound, maybe 1.5 pounds. So you're a little bit more aggressive. And then you'd manage, this is getting a little bit complicated, but I'm telling you, I think this is solid. You would pair your training intensity to where your calories are, right? So when you're eating more maintenance and you have more energy and you feel better, you should be training a little harder, kind of what Alan was saying, like RPE, right? Where it's feeling better, well, let's lift a little bit more. 3 weeks of dieting or taking 3 weeks of a pretty aggressive fat loss phase is not going to kill your strength, or it shouldn't, right? If you're training well, it shouldn't. But those 2 weeks then, you'll feel a lot better. And if you did 2 blocks like that, 3-2, 3-2, by the end of it, you'll still be down 10 pounds or 8 pounds, whatever the goal is, right? But I guarantee those 2-week maintenance blocks will feel a lot better than if you're just like, man, I'm just gonna do 6 weeks straight, go right into it, lose those 10 pounds. So I think cycling your intensity and your overall volume relative to what you're eating is super important. And I think for most people just in this room, if they wanna lose some weight and they're focusing on getting stronger, it's entirely possible. You're like, that was way too in depth.
No,
Yeah.
I thought it was good.
Yeah.
Follow up on that. First week is not quite as heavy.
Yeah.
So could I basically adjust my diet so I might be in a deficit, more of a deficit the first week, less of a deficit the second week, and then closer to maintenance or even above the third week? Would that potentially still work, or is it not quite?
Yeah.
Okay.
So, great question. Again, thinking about this way too much. But so it depends on what style you want to do. I like the one I've currently been doing, and it's been great. I'm down now about 16 pounds in 11 weeks or 12 weeks, and I would say relative body weight strength is absolutely there. The bench is probably down like 15 pounds, but I've lost 15 or 16 pounds, so I think that's an acceptable loss, you know. I personally like the 3-2, but you could do 3-3. It depends on your timeline. Like, let's say you got a meet, and you're 12 weeks out, and you want to, for whatever reason, you want to be in that lower weight class, like you just have that timeline, okay, like we need to talk. You need to find the right ratio that works for you. I'd say 3-3, you'll be chilling. Like you won't experience probably any decrease in strength. 3-2 is what's working for me. I've had some people, I know people that do 3-1, and again, I think it depends on your overall strength levels. But what I like to do, if you only want to lose 10 to 15 pounds, and you're setting it up. So let's say basically they're 4-week blocks. You're training like 5, 3, 1, right? Where it goes down and then it goes back up roughly every 4 weeks, right? You're building, cool. Is you start week 1, which would be aggressive. Your first 3 weeks, you start at a low load and you keep building in intensity. So week 3 is actually pretty intense and you're actually in a pretty big deficit. But week 4, where it gets intense, you're back in maintenance, so you feel better. And then week 5, you'd be still maintenance, but now you're on a deload, or you lower back down, right, with the weight. And as you continue to build, now you feel a little bit recharged. So yeah, totally pairing the food intake to the intensity of the programming is absolutely critical. You should you shouldn't be on test day and it's your worst calorie week, you know, right? So those two things, I think pairing those, and I think it's weird. I've tried to do just a little bit of research of people talking about it. People talk about weight cuts for powerlifting and for competitions, but they don't talk enough, I think, about body composition and how training performance should be affected by that. Yeah.
I think Mike Israel and like RP Strength do a pretty good job handling that, even like with their templates and their programming of how they do that, because they pretty much give you ranges to be in for your cutting phases, your light, medium, heavy days. They break that all down. Just a shameless plug to them. Like I've just used them in the past before, and I've always noticed that my strength has always been, and then Tiny, we've done it too, and it's maintained pretty well over the years, like if I've ever used one of those. So just another thing to think about. Yeah, and Helms too. Like I know Helms is a big fan of all the longer, like bodybuilders who cut for like 12 to 36 weeks versus like or over that duration. Normally, like typical bodybuilders, there was always like the 12-week cut, right? And he's saying like extended weight, 24 plus. And even the way their physiques look compared to like a short duration cut has just been a lot better. So he's been diving into that stuff.
The crazy one, I'd say, Joey, I'm like, this guy's a freak, Eric, is that he managed to lose, I need to think of the exact amount, but he lost 35 pounds, I think, or maybe 40 pounds total from when he started to his competition. And he was at Occam Athletics, and he hit a max deadlift, just like after his competition, immediately after his competition. And it was within, not only 10%, within, I think, 4% of his all-time best. I think he pulled maybe 465 or 470, and his best conventional was like 485. Yeah. And I'm like, what? You've lost 40 pounds and your deadlift has only gone down 15 pounds?
Yeah.
All right. Maybe you know a thing or two.
Yeah. Yeah, this is one thing that I really don't like about one-on-one coaching, like long-term, is that there comes a time when they're fine without me, and they're just paying me to count the reps and be there. And I don't let that run far. I'll let them know, hey, you can do this without me. But at that point, I think teaching them programming is a better idea. And then past that, a lot of people like to learn the why of things. So going further into that, here's how you lift, here's how you program, here's why I suggest programming like this, and then maybe even further than that, as to here's how to teach it, here's how to coach it. So that's kind of like the levels I would work through. But yeah, I think that a lot of people feel like when they're in a position of authority as a personal trainer or, I don't know, a gym owner or a YouTuber, whatever, they feel like they always have to say something, or they always have to teach, or they always have to talk. I don't think it's the case. Once someone knows enough to go on their own, I'll let them know it's time to fly.
Yeah, I think even like with the group, with you guys, like there wasn't much more I could say. I gave you guys cues, so I just called you over. The first it says like, is there anything like that you guys want extra? Like what are your maybe more in depth or like the why of something? And that's kind of the stuff we addressed. So kind of ended there. But even like myself as a personal example with Alan, like he programmed for me for a long time. And then it kind of got to the point where like I understood what we were doing. I could do that on my own. But like if I'm going to go to Worlds, like I'm hitting up my boy, you know what I mean? Like to help get me through that phase, or maybe just the specifics of what it is. But then after that, it's like I go back, I know enough on my own. Or if I have questions, I can reach out and kind of dive deeper into something specific.
I think a problem, before Omar goes, is I think that overcoaching is a problem, to where you just have to always say something. And then you're convincing that person that they don't know enough to go on their own. But sometimes it's fair to be encouraging and say, you know enough. Or even if you make a mistake, you know that you made the mistake. I don't need to constantly point it out. So.
Look, Matt, it's about making money, right? So always remind them they're never good enough. Keep them emotionally weak and dependent, and you'll always have them as a client.
So I work part-time as a coach and part-time in like a manual labor beer distributing. So I'm always like bent over, moving like cases off of a pallet onto a hand cart repetitively, so much so that it bugs my back. So that I guess my question would be along the lines of like tips and tricks to sort of balance wanting to lift heavy and do my normal programming day to day throughout the week, what have you, with also having to work in manual labor part-time and still trying to make progress and stuff like that. So.
Yeah, I'd say don't get in your head, meaning that you don't want to set yourself up for that negative reinforcement. Oh, I think my back's going to hurt. Like I just went, of course, you're working a long period of time. Oh, it's fatigue. Man, I bet this session's going to suck. If you start disassociating those thoughts and just see how the weight's moving, and instead try and think to yourself, what can I do today? And just leave it more open as opposed to pre-selecting what the narrative's going to be. And I totally understand, like you're doing a real job. Like we're just sitting on our butts coaching people, right? We don't have that experience working a manual labor job and then going and training. Just keeping an open mind to the potential, the possibility where, you know, that adage, the idea that your body lies to you, just the concept that until you start lifting the weight, you have no idea. If the bar velocity, if you know it's like, oh, this is actually feeling pretty grindy today, okay, we could talk, right? If it's feeling really speedy on the other hand, you might have a fantastic session. You might come into a workout with a sore back, or you're just like, ah, man, I really, it sucked. And then you start warming up, and this is a better day than normal. And then I would say just be, extra aware, or there's nothing wrong with using a belt more often. So even on your warm-up sets, for whatever reason, if you just tend to notice that your back, in quotations, fatigues easily, so you're just like, oh, like that was a rough day, there's no problem with warming up with your belt, right? From the first plate, second plate, third plate, fourth plate, as opposed to trying to see. And so removing that negative association can sometimes be a very good thing.
Yeah, I think auto-regulation, kind of like what I said for the diet question, and not being necessarily rigidly held to target weights. It doesn't, as long as the effort and the intensity's there, if you're supposed to work up to whatever, a set of 6 and leave 2 reps in the tank, 6 at 8, it doesn't really matter if it's 405 or it's 385. Right, the weight on the bar is not the most important thing. It's more of managing that effort from day to day, and reassuring yourself that you are adaptive, right? And so that working and training, the more you do it, the less of a stimulus it is, and the more you get used to it. Just encourage yourself that it'll probably get better. And if it hasn't in a long time, maybe what Omar said, reframing the way you're thinking, and also managing what you're doing in the gym, because work is probably more important than your deadlift session. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I was just trying to play with your schedule if you could. Like, even with myself, when I picked up jiu-jitsu, I realized real quickly I have to figure out how to organize this. So it could be just figuring out the training days in association with the work days, flipping some things around. Can I get in early? Is it better if I go in late? Just playing with different variables such as that and everything else that they said.
Yeah, or even if you can, have your, like 2 hard days on Saturday and Sunday when you don't work, or something like that. You know what I mean?
Yeah, just a quick aside before you ask your question. I'd encourage everyone to check out an article by Brian Miner, because I know a lot of you guys have been talking about the concept, I can't train to a certain level of performance that I want, right? Like I want to hit these numbers, I'm used to this level of strength, and I want to go here, but I got kids, or maybe my work's bothering me. I think we actually get the concept of progressive overload slightly wrong, where we just think it's about doing more weight or it's about doing more overall volume. And his article, there's a lot of nuance to it, but reframing what the gym is or how to actually make progress or what progress means, I think will reinstill motivation for a lot of individuals here, where we become too attached to, the weight. Like if I can't, my back's fatigued, I can't deadlift 405 today, this session is a wash. Really thinking about long-term and how progressive overload works. He gets into the science of it and the mechanisms and what you can do in face of, just the simple fact that I can't lift more weight today is really good, just to remind yourself that going to the gym and getting work done pretty much always is a positive thing.